So this lesson we're going to look at 3 different methods to convert the object content into an array and then looping through the array results and outputting them on the page. First one we're going to look at is the entries, which is going to produce both the key and the value. And then we can loop through those, output them on the page. If we just want the keys, you can use the keys method. And then using the key, you can also have access to the value if needed. So you can select the value using the parent object information. And if you just want the values to be turned into an array, you can use the object values, and this only returns back the value of each item within the object. So there's no keys that are going to be returned back with this method. Let's go ahead and create a new JS file. So I'm calling it js6.js and create an object there. So we're going to be looping through the entries of the object, getting the key and the value pairs. And I'll show you different methods that you can use in order to get the values out of the object. And then we're also going to be adding them into the web page. So first off, let's create an object and add in some values into the object. So with some property names. So there's our object. Log it out into the console as well, just to check it in the console. So we've got an object with some values that are there. And we're going to be using, first we'll use the object entries. So this will give us a way to, it's a method that returns an array of the given object's values. So it's going to return back an array. And let's set that where we're going to be looping through the object entries. So using the object method and then entries, and then we need to specify within the argument the object that we want to use. In the console, see what we've got for the object entries. So that gives us several different arrays. And for the arrays, we can loop through the array contents. There's a number of different ways to do that where we're looping through array contents. And one of them is just using a for loop. So we can set up the values, and let's use const within the array, so within the for loop, and get the key and the value that's being returned back of. And we already have it as an array, but you can also just directly do it within the same statement. So a lot of times it's done this way to avoid having to have the second line of extracting the array, and it's going to produce the same result. So this is going to give us a way to loop through the contents of the array using the for method. So we can return back the key. We can also return back the value and use the backticks of the template literals so that we see the key. And then also we can see the value that's associated with it. And that actually should be the curly brackets. So that outputs those values into the page. Let's create a page element. I'm going to give it a name of main, and using the document create element, creating a div. So it's going to be a container that we can use in order to add content into. And then using the document body, prepend the main object to the document body. And then as we iterate through, we want to output those results onto the page. So to do that, we're going to create an element and using the document create element. So creating a div, and then within the div, we'll set the text content of the div, and that will equal the results that we're returning back. So we're not going to be putting them to the log, we'll just add them to the page. And then we also want to append that element to the main object. So we'll take that and do an append of the element. So that what that does is that allows us to output the results of the object onto the page. And then of course you can also structure it where you can have equals and so on. So that can equal those results. So any changes to the object will be now reflected as we're outputting them and as we're iterating through. So you can also update the object, of course. Let's do a quick for loop, and we'll create a bunch of object items and loop through while I is less than 10 and increment I by 1. And here we can set the object, and we use the bracket notation and do a val plus whatever the value, or you can even use the backticks. So val and then the value of I plus 1 is going to equal to, so that returns back a bunch more items into the object, and then we can iterate through them to see the results. You can also get the object. So this is a method that returns the object's property names, and then you can iterate through those. So selecting it, and this is also going to return back an array output. So setting up as array, and instead of entries, let's do the keys and see what we get for the results. So make the console a little bit bigger. So there's all of the key values, and because this is an array, we can loop through each one of the items of the array and return back the value. And we can now use array methods because it is an array. So if we want to see the values that are associated with the object, let's do the same thing. And we'll create this into a function. And I'll call it adder. And it'll expect one value, which will be the output content, or I'll just call it HTML. And within the HTML, this is the result that we're going to be adding. And over here, we can get the element if we want, send the value to adder, and that's going to be the result there. And then this is just returning back. If we do an append child, that's going to append it and return back the element, so we can return it, and that way we can use it if we need to. So also let's update to the adder, or we'll take the element and looping through, let's select, we only just have the value. So the value is actually going to be the key, and then the value of this is going to be the object 1 and whatever we have for val. So that will return back the object value. So once again, we get the same result being output, where we get all of those values from the object. I'll make this smaller, so we don't want to have that many results. So there's our new set of values that's being added into the page. Just between these, I'm going to run a function adder, and let's just add in a horizontal rule. And I'm going to update this instead of text content to be inner HTML. So that gives us an option that we can add in the horizontal rule for the output on the screen. There's also the values, so we can get the object values. And the same way that we got the keys, that's another option that we can get the values of the object. So let's select that. And I'll just do an H1 there, and this will say keys. And before we're outputting the entries, so we've got the entries, we've got the keys. So this is going to be the values. And instead of object keys, use the object methods values, and we're outputting it into the console. So see what result we're getting there. And this is coming in line number 25, where we're constructing an array from all of the values that are contained within the object. So set those values, and this way we can only really output the values. So it's just going to be the different values as we're iterating through. So we can get the index as we're doing the for each. So we can use the index, and we can get the array contents, and then the value is just going to be val. So this is if you just want the values, and you're not going to have the key names, and just like as you would within the entries and the keys. So depending on what results you want and how you want to output the results, you can use the different methods in order to iterate through the contents of the object by turning them into arrays and then outputting the results on the page.